Welcome to the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Join us each week as we sit down with the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management and author of Your Fiscal Physical, Ryan Nelson. Tune in to gain valuable insights and practical tips as we simplify complex financial concepts into digestible lessons. From budgeting to retirement planning, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering financial literacy.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Fiscal Physical Podcast. My name is Aaron Hoisington. I am here with Ryan Nelson, the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management. And Ryan, how are you today? How are the markets?
I'm doing well. We're pre-recording this, so I have no idea how the markets will be doing. Yeah, I'm sure they're doing great.
Yeah, that's the hope. So keep that in mind there for sure. But no, we really appreciate you sitting down with me today, Ryan, and discussing some topics to make everybody a little bit more fiscally fit. If you guys really want to get fiscally fit, please check out Ryan's book on Amazon. It is a phenomenal read, easy read, quick read, and really informative without a doubt. So a quick plug there. But Ryan, how do you feel about talking about higher education today?
Yeah, let's do it.
All
I'm
right.
excited about it.
Well, I've sounded really enthused, so let's dive in here.
You're going to make me? Let's
yeah.
do it.
Yeah, gun to your head. Here we go. Yeah. But no, we've spoken about higher education, college, these different areas on previous episodes several times. I think we talked about student loans one time, and it's come up throughout the time here. So, today we're going to talk about financing that higher education and how to maybe do it in a way that is most budget friendly, how you can take advantage of some quote unquote free money, if you will, or just ensure that you're doing your due diligence with it to fund your education or fund someone else's education. So, Ryan, today let's explore some options, scholarships, grants, saving models. I'll let you take it away.
Perfect. Yes, I think the best place to start would be the cost of college. And again, right, this is one of those places where the data, take this data with a grain of salt. You can go look at 10 different resources and get 10 different numbers here. So again, I'm not too worried about the exact data, but again, it starts to paint a nice picture for us. So right now, the average cost, according to this resource, which I don't even remember which one I grabbed, but for in-state, a 4-year public in-state university is about $11,600 a year for tuition and fees.
Okay.
And then that's with room and board. And so, I'm sorry. So
I think that was just tuition and fees.
Yeah, right? Tuition and fees, including room and board, it's around $29,000 a year. Sorry. Yeah, around $30,000.
Around $30,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was in-state public. Out of state was around just under $50,000 a year, and for a private, can be closer to a little over $60,000 a year. So again, I don't care too much how exactly accurate these numbers are, but we're talking about like in-state being around $30,000 a year, out-of-state being around $50,000, private being around as high as $60,000.
Sure.
Again, are those numbers perfect? I'm pretty confident they're probably not. But either way, that still helps to at least start to paint the picture of like, okay, what does college cost these days approximately with room and board there factored in?
Oh yeah, and I think that it's a good piece. I think about like we've all probably heard that everybody talks about back in my day. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think about like growing up and talking to my parents and. Them being like, oh yeah, college was pretty affordable, like to go to, and like that was, I went part time or I did this, and I worked my way through college, and I was able to work and pay at the same time, and I graduated in 4.5 years, something like that. You don't really see that very often, I suppose. So those numbers specifically that you just had, I don't have the data for 40, 50 years ago, whatever, but probably a bit more nowadays overall versus like what it used to be.
Yes, exactly. So what we would look at is sort of to compare sort of how these would compare across decades. You'd want to compare it to how inflation has gone up, right? Sure. So we would expect the cost of tuition to cost less 50 years ago, but is it proportionally less, or how does it differ from a kind of proportionally to how much money people were making back then and stuff, and what the cost of the goods cost back then? And so if you were to think about, so since this data goes back to 1963, if you were to look at like college tuition compared to inflation. So inflation is going up in theory every year pretty much. If college was going up at the exact same price, then college tuition would have increased at 0% above inflation. It would have just matched inflation, right?
Sure.
What's happened though since the 60s, it's gone up at roughly 197% above inflation. So it's definitely growing a lot faster than inflation. Over the last 2 decades, tuition is so CPI, Consumer Price Index. We talked about that in one of the earlier podcasts. So over the last 2 decades, CPI went up by about 40%. College tuition went up almost 70%.
Holy cow.
So you can start to get that feel that, college tuition seems to be rising. Again, how accurate is that data? I don't know. Again, you can find drastically different numbers here, but I think the takeaway, and pretty much no matter what data set you look at, the point is college tuition is going up, and it's going up relative to inflation or CPI. So it's growing at a faster rate than most other goods. So it is getting, not only is it just getting more expensive, it's actually getting more proportionally expensive.
Right. Yep.
So even if you're making the same money as somebody 50 years ago, it actually takes more of proportionally of the money you would earn to pay for it. So now we know, okay, college is, hey, it sounds pretty expensive.
Yeah,
it's pretty expensive. It's growing at a fast rate, right? So like, what are our options? So you mentioned in the intro free money, right? So there's things like scholarships and grants that we should explore. So that's probably the first place like any high schooler should be looking at in exploring like what type of free money do we have access to, right? So there's merit, there's all sorts of different scholarships, right? You could go to full ride for being an awesome quarterback, or you could go because you're super smart, right? There's all sorts of different ways you could qualify and get some sort of merit-based scholarship, which is awesome. And there's all sorts of different resources out there to find them. I'd probably start at your local. If you're a high schooler going to school, kind of the traditional route, I would start with your resources at the school. But then there's also grants. So there's some needs-based grants, like the Pell Grant and state level programs that are based on maybe your parents' income. And then I talked on a previous episode about the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. One thing I would say is every single person that's looking to go to college should be probably filling out that free application for federal student aid. It's free. Yeah. It's a free application, right? So that's to start with. And that in itself can help qualify you for some federal student aid. But then there's other, even if you're like coming from a higher income family and you won't directly qualify for anything from the FAFSA itself, there are other programs now that require the FAFSA. So they're almost using the FAFSA data as like table stakes as almost their application as well. So a lot of organizations will just basically take your FAFSA data and that's how they make their determinations. So yes, there are some like needs-based grants that you could potentially be eligible for based on your FAFSA, but it's also it also makes sense to apply either way. Even if you plan on getting like a merit-based scholarship or something like that.
Yeah, and I would also say too is you called out like for high school kids too, and like for myself, like I just about a year ago now, I went back to school. If you're going to go back to higher education, whatever, master's, or just to go get your original bachelor's, associates, whatever, definitely do that, regardless of age. Like I think about, I always thought, I was like, oh, FAFSA, it's like for when I'm in high school or when I'm in college specifically, but like anybody can, if you're going back, fill it out, even if you're like, oh, I think I make too much money. Like you mentioned, like that puts you in the pool for other things specifically. So like, but scholarships, and you touched on scholarships. There's scholarships for everything.
It's incredible.
Too. It's insane. Now, I would just a little bit of a rant here. I didn't get any scholarships. I applied for a ton, but I didn't get any. Like, so I was like, oh, okay, that's a bummer. But there are so many. There's single moms going back to school. There's parents. There's all these different things that you can apply for. There's so many niche things that if you find them, if you work hard enough to find them, you probably have a pretty good chance of getting something towards it. And I think every little bit helps to avoid, hopefully, paying out of pocket or getting a student loan or something like that too. So everybody, if you're thinking about going back to school, regardless of age, fill out that FAFSA for sure.
Yep, absolutely. That's real brief, high level, some of the sort of quote unquote free money out there. So scholarships and grants and some initial action steps to start exploring that.
Love it.
Secondly, if you're going to say, okay, I'm going to actually save for my kid's retirement, which you might probably want to do on top of this free money.
Sure.
You could explore things like 529 accounts, custodial accounts, brokerage accounts. And we've touched on these accounts in previous episodes. So if you want more in depth, you could go find one of our older episodes as well and dive into the specifics here. But a 529 account's a tax advantage that qualifies for education expenses. So you could use this for higher education. So you could put money into a kid's 529. They could then use it for college down the road. And that's a really tax efficient way to save for college. Or what I find a lot of clients are doing now is they'll use something like a brokerage account. You don't get the tax efficiencies that you'd get in a 529, but what you gain is flexibility. Right. So, some parents say, well, I don't know if my kid's going to go to college, so I'm a little nervous about saving in a 529. Sometimes maybe for them and their values, maybe it's better to save in a brokerage account, in which case, yes, they lose a little bit of the tax advantages, but now they can use that money for anything they want. So putting money down for a down payment for a kid's house, buying a kid a car, giving it to the kid to start a business, right? There's just so many other uses, or using it for college. You can still use that for college as well, right?
Yep.
So you gain that flexibility. So I find that becoming a more and more popular choice for college savings amongst some of my clients. So this is just kind of interesting, and you just want to sort of do some due diligence there and pick the solution that aligns with your values.
Yeah, and I think you call it the flexibility piece of like a brokerage account is huge without a doubt. Like I think about the because who knows in 18 years, like if you're, say you have a new kid, you're like, cool, I'm going to start him a 529. It's like, well, is this kid going to, what does college look like in 18, 17, 16 years, whatever it might be as well? Who knows? But most likely we'll still be buying things.
Sure.
I would assume. So
something.
Yeah, I think that having a bit of a flexibility there, whatever works best for you, obviously work with your financial advisor, financial planner, whoever it might be, and kind of figure out what your goals are. We've touched on that millions of times at this point, and figure out what works best for you as far as those plans go.
Perfect. And then what we'd want to do, so as you start to plan, right, I think there's a slight difference between like if you're the kid planning or if you're the parent planning. One note for parents planning, right, this is an analogy I think I've probably used on this podcast before, and I've certainly used in hundreds of client conversations, is that analogy of on the airplane. Put your, what do they say? Put your oxygen mask on before you put your kid's oxygen mask on, right? Like if you don't have your oxygen mask on, you're not going to be able to help your kid. So make sure you're in a position to help your kid, right? A similar thing is true. I think a lot of parents have very positive intentions, but they will spend money they can't afford on a kid's college, thinking they're helping the kid. And they're not. They need to help themselves first. They can't be a help to the kid unless they're helping themselves, right? There's a lot of people who become financially dependent on their children, right? So there's a lot of parents who end up becoming financial burdens on their children that they could have avoided that if they didn't do things like pay for their kids' college and stuff like that, right? So it's this really tricky thing because you're doing this deed out of the goodness of your heart. You're trying to do what's right? And so it's like all the intentions are nothing but positive, but the outcome can actually sometimes be negative and detrimental to the kid. So I would say, like, as a parent, set boundaries. Know that you can't sacrifice your own retirement to pay for your kid's college. That wouldn't be appropriate. Make sure you're taking care of your own finances first. Once you have your oxygen mask on, how can I help my kids, right? And just that in itself, making sure you have your own oxygen mask on, taking care of your own finances, you're probably setting a good example. They'll 100%. Probably have the biggest impact on your kids' financial lives anyways, right? Oh, yeah. But spending money you don't have will not set a good example. Yep. And then as a student, right, you could work. We talked about like quote unquote free money through grants or scholarships. We also talked about if maybe your parents saved or invested in a 529 or a brokerage account for you. But you can also work as you're going through school, right? And there's some like work scholarships so there's some opportunity where maybe you go to a community college, or maybe you work part-time and go to school part-time, or work part-time, go to school full-time. There's definitely some balances there as the student that they can start planning. Because these are, the reality of this world is like I mentioned at the beginning, like these costs are going up. And to think that we can pay for college the same way today that we paid for it 50 years ago is maybe a little silly. We just talked about how drastically it's increased compared to what it was 50 years ago. And so just knowing that there's different approaches, and just because your parents went through school one way doesn't mean you have to do it the same way. Times have changed, and therefore your strategies and tactics should change as well. Figuring out a way to work while you go to school can be a very efficient way to sort of help subsidize and pay for it as you go.
Oh yeah. And I think we talked about it on a previous episode too, is like, and you just hit it on it again, like the way that I went to school, you went to school is probably going to look different than when my kid or people's kids go to school. And like, you think about the rise in trade schools, for example, like if you're like, hey, I really want to be a plumber.
Sure.
Like, I don't need to go to University of Nevada, Reno and spend 4 years and get a degree and then become a plumber. Maybe I'll just go do that specifically. So, figuring out the best option, whether it be like, hey, maybe I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I go to community college for a couple of years first and knock out some of these classes I got to take anyway before I figure out where my focus is too. So like I said, I think we talked about that previously, but I definitely want to plug that everybody's path is different. And I think the paths are going to continue there's a lot of options out there to figure out what works best and how to financially like manage that and navigate it. It's tough, but there's abilities to do that for sure.
100%. The other thing I would say is this would be where maybe parents and students come together to kind of game plan and work together and maybe use some tools to understand the ROI of college.
Return on investment, right?
Return on investment. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Just eliminate the jargon.
Yeah. Well, as much as we can.
But yeah, I mean, what you'll find is not for the most, there's definitely some exceptions here, but like if let's say you go to UNR, right? For the most part, in general, your cost is going to be very similar no matter what degree you get. That's not completely true. Like I think I had to pay some premiums to get my engineering degree and stuff. Like the cost, I can't remember if it was the cost per credit or you had to pay like some extra fees per credit to be an engineer. But largely, like when you look at the whole, it's basically going to cost the same to get your degree, whether it's in engineering or finance or marketing or English or education, right? And so the reality is, while the cost is very similar, maybe a small difference, your earning potential is very different. And so, there probably is, like, it is reasonable to approach college, I think, with it's like real life, right? So it's important to pursue your passions and your dreams and everything and make sure you're happy in life. And it's also important to make sure you're making wise financial decisions as you do all those same things, right? So while you should pursue your passions, you should also do it in financially responsible ways. You shouldn't just be like, and so similarly, like, college is no different. If you're going to go to college and pursue something you're passionate about, excellent. How do we do this in a financially responsible way? And evaluating, okay, what is this called? Like, what is this degree? What is this going to mean when I graduate? How much am I going to make? Like, I've sat down with some people, like, going through some private universities and stuff where they're, I mean, no joke, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And, they may be earning $50,000 a year based on the profession that they went to school to get this degree. And when you think about, like, after what they take home after taxes, and then so after what they have left over after they pay taxes, and then they're going to have to pay for a place to live and put food on their table, and you look at what income they have left, it's like they can't even really pay their interest without even doing anything fun. And it's like, so is that person really pursuing their dreams? Probably not. That's probably not what they were signing up for. They were misled and misguided on it, right? And so I'd say, that's where I think some parents could step in and like offer some like real value there and like help kids understand what the implications of these decisions would be. And also for some of the kids to start thinking themselves like, yeah, this is great. This will be a fun 4 years or 5 years or whatever, but also I should start thinking about the implications thereafter, and that's easier said than done. I know when you're going to, a lot of times you're 18, 19, 20-year-olds making these decisions, right? But us as adults can help sort of start to coach them through these. So that'd be my 2 cents there. So kind of, final thoughts are there's obviously no one size fits all like solution here. But, I would look into some of those free quote unquote free money options, so the scholarships and the grants. And then I would also explore, if you're the parent, looking into 529s or brokerage accounts to save for your kids college. If you're the kid, I would explore like I said earlier, the scholarships. I'd also explore like, do I have any opportunity to work while I go to school, and then really start to sit down and figure out like what school makes the most sense and what degree makes the most sense for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I think all of those things are great too. I would also plug, a lot of times nowadays, at least where I went to school, and even still, like when I went back and got my master's degree, they have like these financial education courses to take. Like I know that before I could take out, like I took out a little bit of a student loan for mine, you had to pass this course that showed that you understood what a student loan was. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, and I think back when I was in college, because I took out, or when I was doing my undergrad, 18 to 22 or whatever, I didn't really know what a student loan was, or when do I pay this back? How does this really work? Like I figured it out like down the road when they started to be like, hey, you owe this money.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I need to pay that off quick. But nowadays, like I feel like it's much more, at least things, depends on what university or whatever you go through, but there are opportunities to find this stuff out up front and really educate yourself financially to be like, oh, okay, like what does this mean if I'm getting this grant? Like, okay, do I have to do XYZ to keep that grant? Do I have to pay? What do I have to do with this specifically? So I think that's where you step in as like a parent or a financial advisor or something like that, and be like, hey, just maybe check this out. Make sure you know what you're signing up for and know what you're getting into. And I think
that's wise.
Even in itself, like at the bare minimum, you kind of know if that ultimately you want to choose to go to that private university and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, like. Those are decisions you make. That's fine. That's awesome. Everybody's got their own path, but just know down the road, like know what you're getting into as best you can, I suppose.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something that just highly recommend to individuals without a doubt. So
makes sense to me.
Excellent. Well, that is solid, Ryan. Appreciate the thoughts, the information there. Hopefully you guys learned something, and everybody hang tight. We'll be right back on the other side of this.
And now to put the personal in personal finance.
Welcome back, everybody, to the personal side of the Fiscal Physical podcast. I am still here with Mr. Ryan Nelson, and Ryan. A few episodes ago, I posed the question like, "Hey, if you had $1 million and you had to spend it in a day, like how would you do that?"
Sure.
It's funny, that was really a conversation started, but you couldn't invest it. That was the only thing. You had to actually spend it.
Yeah,
so I still think about that. And I had a buddy over the other weekend, and he was like, "Dude, I would buy these two houses right behind you, combine them, and then we'd make a mega complex." And I was like, that would be a way to spend your money. Sure.
Yeah.
Like kind of thing. So I like those kind of hypotheticals of if you had a certain amount or whatever. So I got a question here for you today.
Let's hear it.
If you could have an unlimited supply of one thing besides money, what would it be?
Sure. Yeah, it's a tough one. I can't think of anything like... I mean, if golf balls would be nice.
Yeah,
I go through that.
as a poor golfer myself, I would save a lot of money. Golf balls.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I think like like water would be cool. I think that's like the number one shortage of like on this planet is like people having access to clean water.
Sure. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of countries who don't, so that'd be cool. Air would be kind of cool. Go out in outer space, like what hey. Probably pretty lonely out there if you're the only one with unlimited air, though.
True.
But I think the clear winner for me would have to be time. I think just unlimited time.
That's the one, man.
Yeah. What about you?
I was like, oh, he's going to leave me time. He didn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, the time piece, I think we've spoken previously about time, like just how valuable it is, and you can't really put a price on it because it is invaluable, if you will. Like, but you hit on the clean water piece of it. That's the one I would definitely. I'm like, clean drinking water, having access to that, and like is something I take for granted every single day of my life. And I'm like, wow, like I just took a sip of water just while you were talking, and I was like, that was really good. I really like that. Like the fact that like I don't have to go out and maybe buy the water, or I have to like hike down to a well to get the water. Like having that unlimited supply of water, I feel like it would make you like one of the most powerful people in the world too.
Oh, probably. I'm sure it would. Yeah, you think oil is important. Yeah.
You think about that. Like, so I think I'd probably go with the water piece of it. I think that would be if I had an unlimited supply of clean water.
Yeah, that'd be
that
cool.
would be pretty. They would one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, I was hanging out with some of our buddies here a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about when we went to Brazil one time, and they were going over the story about drinking water there, and basically even the local where we were at, even the locals don't drink like the tap water, right? Like, so like imagine everything you drink having to be like filtered.
Sure.
Like you can't just drink the tap water anywhere in your city. Just that alone is like, and they are a lot better off than a lot of other places in the world, right? So, it's definitely interesting. And like you said, something at least I definitely take for granted.
Yeah. And you hit on my wife is actually from Brazil, which is funny. And you mentioned that. And she, her family does not drink water. Like they
Smart.
Even still, they live here in the United States and they have all the access to
what do they drink?
Juice. That is like one of the, and I remember like when I first started dating this girl, I was like, oh, do you have a water bottle? She's like, what? Like, and I was like,
juice bottle.
I was like, she's like, no. And I was like, oh, like I drink a lot of water. Like, and she was like, what? Okay. Like, but growing up, she didn't have the access to that clean, just easy access. You'd have to go buy the water and then when they did, she's like, well, if we're buying this water, let's make something fun with it. And so they'd always like mix in juice with it or whatever. So it was really funny to see like that kind of mentality. And like, even nowadays when she has the she's like, no, I'm good. Like her dad came up and visited us a couple weekends ago. I didn't see him drink a sip of water for 3 days.
That's funny.
Like I don't, he drank some juice, he drank some Coca-Cola, but I didn't see him drink a single drop of water. And I probably drank 2 gallons over those 3 days or something. So it was crazy. I was like, how are your cells like not just starving for this water here? So
it's funny.
Everybody's different or whatever. But anyway, appreciate the conversation as always. Hope everybody starts to get the brain working on what's an unlimited supply of something you guys want. And thank you all, everybody, for tuning in here. And Ryan, I'll let you take the last here.
As always, stay the course.
Thank you for joining us for the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Until next time, happy listening. And as always, stay the course. If you have a question or topic suggestions, please email us at podcast@alchemywealth.com. If you enjoyed today's discussion, subscribe to the podcast to ensure you never miss an episode. And consider leaving us a rating and review on your favorite platform. This helps other listeners like you find the show. For more resources, you can visit Alchemy Wealth Management's website at www.alchemywealth.com or find your Fiscal Physical, the book, on Amazon. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that personal finance is just that, personal. Please don't take anything we say as advice. The preceding content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not an offer or a solicitation, nor should it be construed or relied upon for tax, legal, or investment advice. It doesn't consider your personal financial situation or objectives and may not be suitable for you.